Welcome to Vision 360, where we look at cybersecurity from every angle, from the technical foundations to executive decision-making and leadership context. I am your host, Matthew Webster. I work with cybersecurity executives and leaders to align cybersecurity with business priorities, translating technical risk into language leaders can act on. My perspective is shaped by decades of experience in the field, including multiple CISO roles and years working directly with leadership teams to strengthen governance, leadership, and risk alignment at the executive level. Today, I'm joined by Paul James, who prefers to be known as Kip. He is a retired U.S. Marine Corps Gunnery Sergeant and award-winning technology and cybersecurity executive who has served as both CIO and CISO across industries ranging from defense and government to financial services and healthcare. In this episode, we will explore what he's learned from leading in both roles, how organizations navigate the tension between technology enablement and risk management, and why authority, accountability, and executive decision-making remain some of the most important challenges facing cybersecurity leaders today. So Kip, welcome. I did a brief introduction of you. I know you're far more than that, but if you could do a better introduction to yourself and tell us a little bit more about you, that would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I'm Kip James. Obviously, my legal name is Paul. I've been in technology for almost 44 years, dealing with starting in 1983 when I joined the Marine Corps, and asked a question: do you know anything about computers? I might know a thing or two. Spent my time in the Marines building out, introducing technology into organizations. So we automated a lot of data centers, because back in 1994, when we would go deployed in different countries, we would actually carry the number of bags I had were 27 bags that I would have to go onto a commercial aircraft, get to wherever I was going, get picked up in Thailand or Korea or wherever it was, and we would set up our equipment. We automated that 1994, the first mobile data center in the Marine Corps, which was very, very fun because I got to design the entire thing, and had a team of 43 Marines that would take out a large number of Marines, anywhere from about 10,000. We would support them in 20 minutes to have everything up and running on two separate networks: classified and unclassified, secret and unclassified.
Nippernet,
So
Nippernet.
Nippernet and Cybernet.
Yep.
When I retired from the Marine Corps in 2003, I was going to interview, and my first job out of the Marine Corps was a entry-level security analyst. So going from that, and then 5 years later, I became a CISO from a company called United Launch Alliance, which is a combination of Lockheed Martin and Boeing. Just went on from there. So I'm not going to read my whole resume. It seems like that's what I started to do, but let's start off with some of the experiences. So being a CIO for the last 12 years in the Marines, being a CISO since 2008.
Fantastic. You've got tons of experience, so I think this is going to be a very fun conversation. I love talking to experienced people, so I'm sure everybody's going to learn something from this. All right. So obviously, you've spent years operating both as a CIO and CISO. When you've occupied each seat, what did you come to understand about the other role that you think other leaders don't necessarily see when it comes to that? Because that's sort of a different thing, because there's different pressures on a CIO. They have different metrics that they're going to be going for. What's different about the two from your perspective?
A CIO is more about availability at any cost, which I've seen over and over and over again. A CISO is more of like securing that availability,
Sure.
Which is very difficult if you don't have an open line of communications and both organizations understanding risk. It's a very challenging type of conversation depending on who the two people are. In my experience, in the Marine Corps, it was my job to more communicate risk to the general that I was working for, or the colonel or the major, whoever it was I was working for that particular mission. On commercial, a lot of conversations, it was interesting because I've worked for the general counsel, the CIO, the CEO, the marketing officer. Don't ask me how the marketing officer came up in one position, but they didn't really understand what the role was. As you and I were talking earlier, that's the reason I wrote that
Yeah.
book, right? The Castle of the Cloud, the intern that clicked the link. So that's why I wrote it.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually very important. So we've got kind of the general overview. What are the challenges that come up as a result of that sort of arrangement, the availability versus security that you've seen in your career?
So the challenges are uh, with I don't know if I should say my experiences. My experiences are a lot different than a lot of people, but the challenges are getting the CIO to understand, because typically right now the CISO doesn't report to the CEO. In a very few cases that happens, right? It's more to the CIO or the COO. Is getting them to understand the risk, which currently right now, what I'm seeing, there's a lot of communication difficulties between what the CISO is looking for and what a CIO and a CIO is looking for. So the impact that a CISO can do to the availability of an organization can be catastrophic if you don't make sure that every single, you're checking, dotting every I and crossing every T, right? And what I've seen so far is I'll give you an example, is that I was working for one organization and I said, here's the risk that we see right now. The risk is availability for this particular product, which was our SaaS offering. And we noticed that there were a high level of vulnerabilities associated with it without any type of mitigating controls. So we went to the CIO, said, hey, CIO, here's what we see. Oh, nope, we got to make sure it's available. So we're not even going to worry about it. What happened? Guess what? That site got attacked and it got destroyed. So basically they had to rebuild it all over. So to your point earlier about resiliency, right? It wasn't resilient at that point. So your availability is just tanked because of that one area. So communication, to kind of circle back with what I was saying, communication is key. Making sure that the CISO is giving a clear communications to the CIO of what the risks are, and they need to quantify those risks through availability. It could be cost. It could be impact to the organization as a whole. It could be a learning curve because they may need to do something differently.
Sure. And so oftentimes they're measured against different definitions of success. The availability, as you pointed out, versus the risk reduction, the vulnerabilities, and things like that. What are some areas where you've seen the two could butt heads, and what have you done to get around that?
Wow, that's a good question. um, they butt heads because of lack of understanding, and I'm going to constantly go over that, Matt. That's
Sure.
one thing that I'm always seeing, is that they don't understand the impact of doing such, right? So I had a conversation with a CSO the other day, and they wanted to allow, you know, open doors to an AI model that was free, right? And he says that, or I'm sorry, let me back up. It was more of they wanted to federate with the organizations that they were supporting, and absolutely not. But they're like, oh, it's going to make our life so much easier. Well, it's going to create a risk to the organization, because now you're allowing information to freely go to that organization that you're federated with. So you don't have control of data, which is one thing. You don't have control of that organization reaching in and tipping over the apple cart, because you have your processes and procedures that you're used to executing, and you have your timelines, you have your SLAs that you need to meet. Now you have a bunch of organizations reaching into your IT department and causing disruption within your organization, which causes a lot of different things. It creates your SLA is going to be impacted, of course, right? But you can have, hey, how come you guys are doing this? Well, people are going to may quit because they're being pressured to do something by someone that has no authority of them, but you allowed the federation to happen.
Yeah, and that I could see being a big issue. But there you're getting a little bit into risk, and I'm sure I've got my war
I'm sorry.
stories. I'm sure you do. No, it's fantastic. I love the inroad
Yeah.
there, because when you're looking at it, where do you think the CIO misjudges risk versus the CISO, and how does that play out in terms of the dynamics? Because that can be a
How
big
does
challenge for CISOs and
how
CIOs who
does
look at risk a little bit differently, and some of it has to do with the organizational bias. How are you paid? What's your bonus based upon? So,
well, I mean, CIO is based off of their SLA,
yeah,
most of the time, right? And in some organization, it's more of how long do they retain their staff, right? Can they retain the staff rather than having a constant churn within the organization? There's a in company performance, the normal stuff, but when you start looking at CIO, it's availability of the product. If if the CISO falls under the CIO, he's going to push all the risk over to the CISO and not really care about the risk. He's only going to make sure that it's available, it's available, it's available, it's available. Well,
you're
guess what?
hinting a little bit at the chief incident scapegoat officer, which CISOs are often known for. I mean, that's what I'm hearing out of you, if I'm reinterpreting your words.
it's it's not an interpretation; it's actual fact. I got thrown into that bucket on one organization, and they were
True.
like, "No, you're the scapegoat." I'm like, "No." It turned out to be something completely different than what they thought. Right? It
Right.
wasn't an attack. It was literally something that was misconfigured on the Microsoft side, which caused some influx of certain areas. But because we had a incident, nothing wrong, we had a huge investment in security, which
Yeah.
was funny because they could have prevented it in the first place, right? If they understand, right?
Sure.
But the CI, to your point, the CIO is only going to focus on availability of his product. He's going to make sure that, oh, I've created my ticket, I've executed my ticket, and the change was made. Now, he may or may not really care if the action was done correctly or not, but he's going to look at the ticket and say the ticket's done correctly. So the CISO is going to look at that ticket and says, hey, you just made this change. This change didn't do a security review. Now introduce a vulnerability to your product line. So your impact could be availability. It could be a cost perspective because it's going to take time to fix that particular item rather than solving it way upstream. I know I kind of went around your question, but
No, I
um,
kind of see what you're getting there, because what you're talking about is how are you resolving that issue? When you've got
right,
that tension that's sort of built up between the two, you're using your emotional intelligence to figure out how to handle that and explain the
right.
situation. And getting that communication in there, from my perspective, is exceptionally important. So,
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely, and it's there's the butting heads, right? As you put it, the butting heads is not from both of them wanting to do a good job, but it's the lack of understanding. It's literally the lack of understanding. Not that they don't care, right? But it's I'll go back to that federation comment, right?
Sure.
It got to the point that the CIO wanted to push so much that the CSO literally typed up his resignation letter.
I believe it.
Why would it have to come up to that? It should have never come up to that. It should be, here's the risk. Do you understand that if you do this, here's the impact that's going to happen? Now, if you want to accept that risk, that's completely up to you. But I'm telling you right now,
Right, right.
no, no. And if it's something as devastating as federation to an organization, I'll put my foot down and I'll do the same darn thing as put my resignation letter in, because you're going to put a risk that eventually you're going to point back to me. Why didn't you prevent the loss of our data?
Yeah. And I think everybody who's been in that CISO chair knows that pain that you're talking about if they're reporting into a technical function, because it's just one of those standard processes that CISOs go through. That's been my experience talking to other CISOs and having been in the role myself. So,
Right.
so all right. So one of the interesting things is kind of going along with this as well. A lot of organizations talk about Cybersecurity is a business issue, and a lot of organizations aren't even there. They look at it as a technical issue, but when an incident occurs, they say it's a business
It's a
issue. Like, of
business issue.
course.
No,
Yet
duh.
still, they structure a lot of those decision-making processes as if security were a technical function. The whole thing that you were describing is right around that. So what does that contradiction look like when you get into budgets, deadlines, and executive priorities? And what have you done about some of those situations? Let's pick on one of them.
Um, well, the business function, it is a business function because if you don't do your job right, it's going to, guess what? You're going to have a problem with the business. Simple as that. It's not really hard, right? And the what I've done in the past, it makes sure that the business knows that if we don't do this, here's the impact. For example, worked on basically I established a federal program. Went through FedRAMP authorization. And I said, hey, if we do this, we're going to be able to get more business and have more profit. So I made it a business problem. As soon as I said that comment, it became a business problem. So if I don't have what I need to deliver what the FedRAMP program requires, you now become a platform that you can no longer sell to anyone.
Right.
Right. So then you start getting this. Then I said, let's go a step further. You said you did something, you didn't do something. The federal government finds out, and I think it's 3 times the value of the contract that you have to pay back to the organization. That's if you don't get fined. So guess what? It's a business issue. Yeah. So that's just a federal program. Let's talk about commercial for a second here. So commercial is working into I don't know, I keep on saying availability. I gotta stop saying availability, but
availability is good. Everybody knows what it is.
You have the same type of responsibility. So you have to have HIPAA compliance or high trust compliance to meet healthcare. You have to have PCI to deal with credit cards. So when you have these organizations, you have the same level of requirements to make sure that that you're supporting that organization with the requirements that they are required to adhere to. So if you forget one of those, or you don't pass your PCI, your AOC say, nope, you're horrible. Well, guess what? You're gonna lose business, right? So at the very beginning, even though I just focused on compliance because I didn't want to go down the technical road, is talking about providing a product to an organization that is asking you to make sure, number one, it's secure, number sure it has availability. You can deal with that particular organization to make sure you're providing them the best service you possibly can. It's a business thing, right? And if you don't have the tools to supply those services as the company expects, then your reputation goes down. It's like when you have an attack, what's the first thing that gets hit? Reputation, right? Other than the financial aspect of it, it's reputation. So how do you build that reputation back up? So guess what the business is all about? Reputation. So that's how I actually went to an executive team. I said, look, this is not a security technical issue. I said, the technical aspect is taken care of because you've given me the tools. You don't give me the tools, I don't have the technical aspect of it. I don't meet the level of compliance. We fail the compliance particular areas. Now you have a problem.
Yeah.
Now you can't sell services.
And that's helpful. And this kind of leads a little bit into that next question, because one of the themes that you've done is you've built organizations from the ground up. You inherit that blank sheet of paper, but from a governance standpoint, what are some decisions you make to prevent technology and security from becoming competing functions?
Say that one more time.
So
you said technology and security?
Yeah, it's one IT and security. Yeah.
It's one and the same. You can't do one without the other, right?
Well, of course you can. So, but I mean, what have you done to prevent that? Is what I'm looking for. Prevent the tensions, like availability versus security, when you built those programs.
It's building relationships, right? You have to build relationships to make sure that number one, you have to have competent. You have to be competent in your skills. I can't go to, I'm going to say but my team can't go to IT and say, hey, you have a vulnerability here in your development cycle when you don't have someone on the security side that truly understands development. Because if you run it through SonarQube comes up with all of these false positives, right? So if you don't have someone competent enough to read it, you can't tell the other organization. So I'm finding, and I'm going to go back for a second.
Sure.
I'm finding that as a problem from a security perspective, because some people are starting in security versus starting in technology. Right. But anyway, the aspect of is building the relationships with the people, with competent people that can have a conversation at their level to make sure they understand what those things are.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's important. Just like right now we're finding
big time.
the whole, I mean, there's so many new technologies, so many new things that are going on out there when you're building those types of programs, trying to get that alignment and trying to get the experts to deal with it. You're going to need a network person to understand your routers, switches, and firewalls, and maybe some other equipment as well. Same thing on the Windows side or the Linux side or, the cloud side of the house. It's like when you're starting to build a program, which isn't always feasible for the smaller organizations because they simply can't afford it.
So that's where you find more rounded people in technology that understand security, right? They're not security experts. They're not someone else. You'll bring a consultant in or someone else to kind of help form that particular program. But it's, building it, you said from a blank page, it was a page that had a bunch of black, weird form figures on it, eventually. And I had to make sure that it was legible at some point in time. And building an organization, like you just said, cloud, networking, Windows, Linux, IoT, right? All of these different things. You have to have people that understand those within an organization. It could be one person, could be 100. It all depends.
Sure. Absolutely.
On the size of the organization and what you're trying to protect.
Yeah. Yeah. So to kind of switch gears a little bit. So you spent 12 years as a military CIO, and how did you see the military concepts of accountability, et cetera, shape your expectations of leadership when you entered the corporate world, which is very different than the military world? And maybe you want to explain that a little bit too, because that is a massive shift in the way you approach things.
Well, it's a good thing that I was a recruiter, so I learned how to talk to people no matter how angry they were. Oh my gosh. As a CIO in the Marine Corps, it is more of get the job done. Don't care what you do, get it done, right? And a lot of times there are people that have been in the technology aspect 3, 4, 5, 10 years that truly understand. So it's more of like, do what I'm telling you to do because I'm trying to teach you these particular skills.
Sure.
Right. So that's really wrapped in. So when in 1994, actually, let's see, 94, they said, Gunny, or actually I was a staff sergeant back then. They said, here's 43 people. Okay. Do they know anything about computers? No. You have to teach them everything. So I had to teach them switching. Their switching didn't exist until 96, but we had 10 base T, right, which is RG58, a 10 ohm, ender. I had to do ArcNet, I had to do token ring, right, and teach them between 4 MIPS and 16 MIPS. I know I'm going a little technical, I apologize, but I had to teach them all of these things. Well, the deficiency that I had on myself is I had to teach myself this stuff. I didn't know it all, right? So I had to learn all this stuff and start teaching these individuals how to do it. And it was more like I said before, it's more do as I'm telling you to do, because you're going to get to where you need to be, right? And I'll give a little short story, which I'd love to tell everybody. But please. I had this one sergeant, and he's like, Kip, I can't get this card. And I said, I always told you guys, forget about the software configuration. Think about the hardware configuration. And if you have the hardware configuration, it's easier to deal with than it is with the software installation. This is on a NIC card. This is on a 3M. a 3Com card that you had the dipshits for the interrupts
I remember those. Yeah.
yeah. So I said, go back to it. Oh, I tried everything. I can't do it. I said, if I get it up in less than 5 minutes, you need to buy me a case of Dr. Pepper. I got my case of Dr. Pepper, and the sergeant shook every single one of the cans. He's such a great guy. He's actually living in Ohio now, but I still bring that up to him all the time. He's like, "Yeah, you just told us this stuff. Just do as." I said, once you get to the point, learn yourself. So of those 43 people that I trained in technology, I think at least 30 of them or more had stayed with technology. And I just say that's really, really important, is that, at some point you have to do what you're told. When you're in college, you do what you're told, because you need to learn the concepts, right? And that was what I was trying to do. And that's what the Marine Corps is about. Learn the concepts. You'll have time to explore eventually, and you'll find a better way of doing things, right? Let's go to the commercial side. Oh my goodness. Accountability, don't do it. I stick my foot in your rear end, right? It's literally, accountability is that tough. And I'm being a little bit over the top, but it's literally do as I tell you, or I'm going to put my foot in your rear end. That's accountability, right? Plus, the Marines, when we tell them to do something, they're instantly accountable. That's what they were. They were instantly accountable. You go to the commercial side, it's more of, let me convince you how to do something, right? Let me kind of help you, find your own way. It takes a longer time to get to what you're trying to do, but it grows the individual just the same, right? It's just they become a little bit more free-willed to kind of do what they are. Now, accountability, I can't tell you how many times it says, it's not me. And I actually am looking at the log and I'm like, there's the log saying that you just did it.
Sure.
They're scared. They're scared to lose their job. And I said, guess what? That's a leader problem. It's a leader problem, because the leader should be able to give people tasks, give them enough rope to choke themselves, but not hurt themselves or hurt the organization. And that's what I've learned a lot about, in the commercial world, is like, don't tell them what to do. Give them the direction and let them go figure it out on their own without hurting the organization. Another short story. I hired a Douglas County officer in Colorado that had zero experience in technology. And I said, here's the direction I want you to go into. I want you to learn these things. I didn't tell him how to do it. I said, I want you to learn these things. This guy is fantastic now. He's a director. Absolutely, and this is probably 4 years as a director.
Sure.
With zero experience original, right? So I gave him the direction. I said, here's the things that you need to learn to be successful in your job. Go do it. And in the Marine Corps, I'm going to tell you, go do it, and I'm going to follow up on you, right? In the commercial world, you'll follow up, but it's more, I don't want to say lackadaisical. It's more of, when I have time to go see you, I'll see how you're doing, right? But leaders, I truly believe in my heart that the leaders need to take fear away from the employees, that allow them to think on their own, that grow them a lot better and a lot stronger. Let them fail, right?
Love
so
it.
my two boys are both in technology. One is a compliance auditor, and the other one's a director in IT. And the director of my son, that's the director of IT, he's 30, he'll be 31 here shortly. I said, Devin, here's the things that you need to do. Go learn it. Man, he is just unbelievable now. Just unbelievable. And he rocks it. The company loves him. He's been there for 8 years, and they absolutely love him. There's nothing that he can't do. My youngest son grew up in technology. I taught him computers. He built his own computer. He does his own, liquid cooled. He didn't buy just the fan that's everything's contained. Sure. He actually literally bent all of the plastic tubes and everything. He did it all himself. And I said, I want you to go in compliance. I want you to learn. He took off, boom. And that's the same way that we need to be as leaders, to give the opportunity to our employees and allow your wings to cover them, to make sure they're protected, to allow them to grow and learn and teach and do the other things that they need to do. I know that's a
That's a
long-winded thing, but
great leadership lesson. I think a lot of people could learn a lot from that. So thank you.
No,
Um,
I'm very passionate about that.
yeah, yeah. So it looks like what you're saying is the accountability definitely changed because the style of the culture different, because you don't have these strict rules in the commercial world that you do in the federal world. Would that be an accurate statement? Okay.
Yes, it is. Because you're regimented in one, you're not regimented in the other, right? You can
Right.
be regimented depending what company you're in, whatever
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
regulation you're in, right? But there's things to grow people. And my mission in life is to grow people. And that's the
Right.
reason, as you and I were talking earlier, the reason I wrote those books is to teach people how to interpret things.
Sure. So one of the interesting things too from that, and this could be applied both the military and the civilian world, but I'd like to kind of get your take on that, is the whole responsibility without authority. That is very common because oftentimes, you get the security coming in, they're on the assurance side of the house, and then you don't necessarily have the authority you can say go do it, but then there's a filter that comes in because, well, we've got X, Y, and Z, we'll put into the ticket process. We maybe have to meet SLAs depending on the maturity of the company or what the compliance framework is, but that definitely creates some challenges. How have you navigated that reality throughout your career, especially as you transition from one place to another?
I eventually get the authority with proving myself within the organization. Even though you go through the interview process and you have all the experience in the world, you have to build the confidence within the organization, right? That you know what you're talking about and you know the impact. And you show that this change, here's what's going to happen. Here's the things that it's going to impact. If you do that and you spend time, rather than saying, hey, you have a vulnerability, go fix it, did you think about, do I have a mitigating control, compensating control, or can I transfer it? Right? The three risk items, right? So if you don't think ahead of time and you don't rush through it, you earn that trust of the other group. And I've done that almost my entire career, is that I've been in, back to your point, I've been a network engineer, I've been a system administrator, I've been a
Sure.
DV, right? I've been all of these different little worlds. So am I an expert? No. But I know enough to understand that if I want to execute a change, I have the responsibility to make sure it gets inputted. But now I have to show the confidence and the capability to these individuals. The IT department says, yes, here's the things that's going to happen if you do this. Here's the dependencies, right? But that's how you do it. It's more building. It's back to relationships. You and I talked about that earlier. It's
Yes.
all about relationships and showing that you're capable, right? And you're capable of doing everything that you need to do. I can't tell you, I've sat through so many change boards. Hey, we have this change. It's this. We have a rollback plan. It's this. It doesn't tell me the impact, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't tell me the impact of the change. It's just saying we're going to roll this in, and if we have a problem, we'll roll it back. Well, why don't you do your homework ahead of time?
Yeah.
Right.
And then there's always
And
the problem when you're talking
that's
about the impact. Are you talking about the technical impact? Or are you talking about the business impact? Most
you have to
IT
do
leaders
both.
tend to focus on the IT impact and not the business impact.
Right. Are you going to down this? Do you have to down the system? Which was great with Linux, because Linux now with the new kernel doesn't need to have a reboot.
Yeah.
So you can apply, update without rebooting the system, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move into
But the
one of the,
business,
yeah. Oh, go ahead, please.
no, the business is, we talked about this earlier. The availability is, are we going to affect availability to the clients? Yes or no? If you not, I sure hope you looked at the change to make sure it's not going to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So switching gears a little bit, beforehand, you had even mentioned you've been through a ransomware event. Because one of the things that happens whenever you've got these events, people get flared. They're annoyed at this. They're going to the blame game is very common. But what have you learned about these experiences, especially when it comes to ownership, leadership, accountability, and blame? And how do you manage those sorts of situations? Because that can be a bit tricky for a lot of leaders. And I have not seen this personally, but I've seen other people get fired as a result of being in some of these situations, such as ransomware.
Um, this is a touchy one. I'm going to be very careful of what I say, even though
Please.
it's been 5 years now. So the accountability was an issue, right? And I'll say that the team discussed, found something. They went to another group, says, "Hey, go investigate it." They came back and says, "We investigated it. It's nothing." It turned out to be the same person 6 months later. So, the same group. So accountability and making sure that those checks and balances are there, making sure that trust but verify, trust but in a security event or discussion, trust but verify. You have to trust but verify. If you don't trust but verify, might as well just shoot yourself in the foot. You're gonna get fired, right? The first one was literally so well executed, and I'm gonna go a little bit further than this, so well executed that resiliency was there, right?
Sure.
It was Kaseya. Got hit with Kaseya.
Oh, yeah.
I think I think less than 8 hours we were back up and running 100%, right? The second one, I'm not going to get too much into the business of the details, but there was a lot of stuff that had happened, and there's too many chiefs too many chiefs. To be honest with you, everybody wanted to do everything. So I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to go too far into that particular subject. Now, if you want to talk about the state nation attack, that was fun. So I was called to help an organization that got hit by the state nation. I didn't know this when I got hired.
Right.
And I literally came in and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, we got hacked by the Chinese, and we hired you to figure out what was happening, what they were doing, what they were stealing, feed them false information, and prevent something from happening in the future." I will tell you this: I had to rebuild a lot of stuff just to make it work.
You talking about machines or relationships?
Machines only.
Okay.
On the ransomware, there's a lot of relationships.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and switch a little bit here. Oh, go ahead.
So in the ransomware's relationships in the state nation attack, it was more of I have to rebuild systems, right? Relationships were already established, and there was really a lot of respect, that was there. It was, after the ransomware, I stayed there another 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
After the event.
That's good. So that doesn't happen to all CISOs. So I'm glad you were able to survive through that. All right. So let's talk about uncertainty, because that is a big challenge. You know that from a risk management standpoint. You know that because you don't know when something's going to happen. You gotta make some judgment calls. And so how do you help others, especially when you're guiding senior management? Let's say you're reporting into the CEO or COO or whoever. How do you guide them through that uncertainty to make them feel more comfortable with some of these consequential decisions? And from their standpoint is, you're stealing my budget. And they're going to be as simple as that, for where the business could be making other decisions to grow the business a little bit further, but you're saying we need to invest. So how do you do that without falling into either analysis paralysis or overconfidence? Because that's a bit of a challenge for CISOs, especially for senior leaders.
Well, analysis by paralysis is, I don't believe in that. I think, people just don't know how to make a decision. I think the way that probability and consequence are the two areas that I kind of focus on. And the probability are based off of the factual information that's available to me, wherever I may find it, internet conversations, relationships, having all of these data points that I can pull to say, okay, here's my probability. And my consequence is based off of our business is this. Our investment would be X. So if the consequence is not going to affect our reputation, but is only going to financially, hit us if that financial number is greater than the number of investment to protect, then I have something to stand on. If it's vice versa, then you got to do it, right? You don't have to do it. If your reputation isn't to play, how much insurance plan do you want to have to protect your reputation is what the investment is. So it's a conversation that you have is that, okay, here's what our reputation will cost for this particular product line. Here's what the probability based off of all of our historical data of this thing happening. Here's the CISA, here's the FSCIA, CISA type of reports, depending on who I'm dealing with, right? And then say, here's what they are telling us that what the probability or not necessarily the consequence, but the probability of that particular item that could happen, right? 1 week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 5 years, whatever, right? If it's something that goes way out, then I'm not even going to think about it right now.
Sure.
But I built a tool that would basically do that for me. So I don't have to do, I don't have paralysis.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's helpful. I mean, we're into the modern age of AI, but still you can do that because AI is wrong. You still have to have a judgment even about what AI is saying, unless you just want to give your judgment over to AI, and that gets you in trouble too. So
no, mine's not AI. Mine's mathematically probability. So it's mathematical equations. It's not
okay.
It's fact based, not judgment based at some point, right? If I do build AI, it's going to be on my internal AI that I've trained that I want it to come to a factual conclusion versus speculation. So, sure. But anyway, I'm not going to go too far.
Success with AI than I do. I see it's very problematic, but that's my particular take. But anyway, so
well, I wrote a tool for it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Actually, hey Matt, I'll just tell you this: prompt injection, output safety, guardrail stress, bias and fairness, red teaming, data extraction, authorization, and access controls. So I wrote the tool to tell me those things.
Fantastic. That's good. All right. So looking back across your career in the military service, CIO leadership, CISO leadership, et cetera, what lessons about leadership remain true regardless of the environment?
Your accountability. I had an answer for this too a second ago. Your integrity is like the most important thing that you can have, right? You have to have integrity no matter what. If you're a CISSP, you have to have integrity because that's one of the things that you're measured on. Always be fact-based in your decisions, even though with the introduction of AI and the introduction and people's passion for something, facts become skewed. Always become fact-based, right? If you don't go fact-based, you're going to make the wrong decision no matter what technology is. But that's, integrity, fact-based decisions, and, just understand that you're not driving, you have authority, but don't ever pressure someone to do something. Work with them to have them understand your perspective and understand theirs.
Sure. Yeah. Given that empathy is definitely a critical part of that. So, and you're getting their buy-in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you do it, you're going to create resentment. So
that's I mean, it's in the Marine Corps. I never thought that anybody resented me, right? I don't think anybody resented me in the thing because I believe in having a conversation with the person rather than just say, go do what I tell you to do. That's just not the right leadership style, right? I can be authoritative if I need to be, but I can also be persuasive, right? And everything in between.
Yeah.
No, I can't tell you how many times I've been asked that. I can't tell you how many times that's been asked. What's your leadership style? Depends on the individual.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about the heart of situational leadership here. So you have to have multiple leadership styles. If you use one and you use it across the board, you're going to be dead in the water. I don't care who you are. So I definitely
That's
appreciate
that's why when they ask me the question, what's your leadership style? Depends on the individual.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I got feedback one time that said he wasn't committed to one style or the other. Well, not. I'll never be.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. If you're always authoritative, you're going to be out of a job very quickly. So
Exactly. Even if you're persuasive, you'd be out of a
even if you're
job too.
persuasive, there are certain times you've got to be authoritative, but you use those in a limited context. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not going to do for this stuff there.
yeah, absolutely. So if you were sitting down with a first-time CISO today, what hard-earned lessons about influence, authority, executive leadership would you share with them that they're unlikely to learn from getting their certifications or their frameworks, et cetera?
We said it earlier, very early. It's not about the technology, it's about the relationships. Build your relationships with the people. That's the number one thing I can tell any new CISO is build the relationships. Technology, you can get technology all day long, but you have to, with whoever you're working with, build those up confidently and make sure listen to what they're saying. I see too many people, too many CISOs. Oh, by the way, blah 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 blah, blah, then talks for an hour and doesn't hear a single word of what the other person says. How are you building a relationship that way?
Yeah.
Yeah. 75-25.
Yes. I've heard the 2 ears, one mouth before too. You act like it. Yeah. So any final thoughts from your side that you'd like to share with our audience?
If anybody wants to have a conversation, you can reach me on LinkedIn. I love the conversation, Matt. I appreciate it. It's really good to have a leader that's rolling into a world of having these conversations because it's the first step to make sure that everybody is starting to understand exactly what a life of a CISO is, what a life as a CIO is, and making sure you fully understand before you take two steps in. Because the fire is hot.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I think anybody's in the CISO role for at least a year knows that. So, but no, but
Yep.
I want to thank you very
Yep.
much. I mean, you've got decades of experience that you brought to the table today. You brought your A game here. I really appreciate that. I think our listeners are going to really enjoy what you have to say, and you brought a lot to the table. So I want to thank you very much for being here and sharing your story and your perspectives.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All righty. Bye, everybody.